Good evening. Welcome to this Tuesday, January 15th, 2019 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me remind commissioners, please be sure your mic is lighted green and speak into the mic for the record. And we'll call roll. I'm going to call Commissioner Wiggins just to make note that he is not here. Commissioner Armstrong.
Present.
Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Crane.
Present.
Commissioner Fizer.
Present.
Oh, man, I didn't realize. I knew this looked weird. It says Maisky. Ruh-uh. Yeah, okay. So Commissioner Peterman.
Present.
I'll write you in. I knew something was amiss. Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
And Mayor Turnbow. And Commissioner Faulkner is present. All right. Let's see. We got 2, 4, 6. We do have a quorum. And I think I caught everybody. All right. Personal appearances, none scheduled this evening. One item on the consent agenda, approval of minutes from our December 18th, 2018 meeting. And unless any of the commissioners have concerns about those minutes, I'd entertain either a motion to approve the consent agenda or a motion to accept minutes from our December 18th, 2018 meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from our December meeting, as well as, can I make a double motion and go ahead and motion to approve the consent agenda as well?
Your motion would simply need to be a motion to approve the consent agenda,
Because that includes the minutes.
including the approval of the minutes from December 18th.
All right. I'll move to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes of the December 18 meeting.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Armstrong to approve consent agenda, including minutes from December 18th, 2018. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's all I can get. 6 in favor. None opposed, no abstentions. Moving on, unfinished business, nothing on the agenda this evening. And new business, case 18028. I think we heard this case first. Trying to remember, one meeting ago, and continued it to this evening, continued the case and continued the public hearing, which I will not make the mistake of closing again tonight. And Mr. Warger, I assume you're representing the applicant. I'll give you the opportunity. If you wish to say anything this evening on the case, please come forward.
Steve Warger, 5015 Northwest Canal Street, Riverside, Missouri, representing the developer. We've been waiting on our traffic study, and unfortunately we haven't finalized that yet. And so when that gets finalized, I think everything else is in line. So it looks like we'll be meeting again soon.
Something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to, yeah. Maybe it'll be warmer that day.
Oh, okay. Irony and paradox. I'm not waiting for that one. Thank you, Mr. Warger.
Any questions we have?
Of course. And thank you for coming. Mr. Gress, anything you'd like to say about case 18028 this evening?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As Mr. Warger clarified, the majority of the items that we've been waiting on for the review of the plat have been submitted. The major item that we're awaiting is the traffic study. The plan that they're showing proposes a couple connections onto 58 as well as one connection onto Fox Ridge. There are some concerns that the traffic generated by this development could trigger the need for some traffic improvements along either 58 or Fox Ridge, and so the traffic study is critical to the plating of this property. But it is our hopes that the project engineer can get that submitted in time to have it reviewed and completed by our next meeting on February 5th.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Zur? Public hearing is still open. I'll open the floor to the public. If anyone wants to speak this evening about case 18028, Dean Commercial Property Preliminary Plat. Yes, sir, Mr. Warder.
I'm just gonna throw one more thing here. I just got an email from the traffic person, so looks like it's pretty well close. The stuff on 58, I don't know if you've seen it, 58 is probably gonna be fine coming out on that. The only thing they're working on to finally resolve is, the staff's asked for a peak weekend hour or something to effect like that, so they're trying to work through what
Okay.
that actually is defined as and when that happens. But they'll get it done for the
Good.
next meeting, so we should be good.
Thank you for the update, and good evening, Commissioner Bowie. For the record, let's show that Commissioner Bowie has also arrived. And I'll give you a very quick update. We approved the minutes from our December 18th meeting. Case 18028, Dean Commercial Property Preliminary Plat, which we continued from the last meeting, has been requested to be continued again, but Mr. Warger gave us a brief update. Mr. Grass, Mr. Warger got an email from the traffic engineer. That's what we're waiting on. His traffic study sounds like that's all lined up. And I invited the public, if anyone wished to speak on the case this evening. The public hearing is still open. And seeing no one, we have a request to continue case 18028 to our February, and the associated public hearing to our February 5th, 2019 meeting.
I will make a motion to continue case number 18028, Dean Commercial Preliminary Plat, to our February 5th, 2019 commission meeting, and leave the public floor open for comment.
Retain the public hearing open. I'm sorry.
That's fine. And to retain the public hearing open till such time.
I'll second it.
That was Bowie?
Yep.
Commissioner Bowie? All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Commissioner Bowie, to continue case 18028, Dean Commercial Property Preliminary Plat, to our February 5th, 2019 meeting, and retain the public hearing open as well. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so we now have 7 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Thank you. Give me a second, I'll gather my notes. Okay, Mr. Zur, if you would, we'd love to hear the city council report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's a pleasure to be able to provide the City Council report for the Commission this evening. Since your last meeting on December 18th, 2018, there have been no other meetings with the exception of one on Monday, January 14th, 2019. There were a couple of work sessions in there, but with the holidays, a couple of City Council meetings were canceled. With regard to the January 14th, 2019 City Council meeting, I would note for you that the 29th Amendment of the Unified Development Code with regard to the 5-foot sidewalks was read for a second reading and approved by the council on a unanimous vote. That was the first item that would be of interest for you all. There was also, of some degree of interest, a memorandum of understanding with Variety KC to help fund a project for the TB Hanna Station Park, which the Parks Department has been working on diligently. There was a report with regard to the tax increment financing plans that are currently within the city. We had a report from Mr. Tapp, the Economic Development Director, regarding Foxwood Village TIF, the Raymore Galleria TIF, the Highway 58 and Dean TIF, and the Good Ranch TIF. All of those, no votes were required with them, but they are required to provide a report on an annual basis. There was also a first reading, let me make sure of that. First reading with regard to the rezoning for the Raymore Industrial Development. Basically, the same thing occurred at that meeting. You all had the opportunity to review and approve that back in October. October 16th, 2018 was reviewed and approved by your commission by unanimous vote. Since that time, it's been at the city council level. We've had two separate meetings where it was requested to be continued on request of staff and the applicant so that they could continue to work out the details of that rezoning. Same story with regard to the preliminary plan for the Raymore industrial portion as well. So those were motioned and continued again, same thing as this evening, where motion to continue the hearing and to continue the public hearing on the matter. So those are still pending with the city council level as it continues to work through with staff issues and will be presented at the next city council meeting for further consideration. There was also the Westbrook at Creekmore 15th and final plat was approved previously on your December 18th meeting by a unanimous vote. It had its first reading on the city council on the 14th and was approved unanimously by the council at that time. I believe that's all of the items of interest that I would have for the commission this evening. That covers everything that's been before you. I know that we're reaching back in time quite a ways with regard to that October time or to October approvals. If you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Zur. Any questions for our city attorney? Yeah? All right, well, you're off the hook for a minute. Thank you. Mr. Gress, that brings us to staff report, and I guess you get to talk about engineering as well this evening.
Absolutely, second time in a row. So looking ahead at a couple of our upcoming meetings on February 5th, obviously after the motion this evening, we will be hopefully reviewing before the commission that evening the Dean Commercial Preliminary Plat. As Mr. Warger indicated, that traffic study is getting close to wrapping up, so we should be hopeful for that early February. The other item that the Creekmore folks are working on right now, they've submitted the essentially what would be the third plat for the Cunningham subdivision off of Madison. I believe the commission reviewed that mid last year for their second phase up there. So they're proposing a third 40 lot phase up there, which includes another access point onto Madison. So we're working through the final revisions on that, and you should expect that in front of the commission first thing in February. Those are the only items that are currently scheduled. We don't have any other applications that have been filed. Mr. Catterett and I are kind of actively working to come up with some sort of educational, I guess, seminar that we would hold for the commissioners due to the lack of new business that we're seeing here at the start of the new year. Similar to what we did, I believe, early last year with some education with regards to sign code or with respect to what the purview of the commission is itself and the responsibilities that they should be looking at. I believe Mr. Zur made a great presentation on that last year, so we're looking at something similar to have here as we get started in the new year, so stay tuned on any educational opportunities that we might bring forward to you all. The last item that I will bring up before I get to Mr. Rocco's updates, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we're looking to secure any interest that we have from any of the commissioners in attending the APA National Conference this year in San Francisco. I know I've heard back from one commissioner that says they would definitely be interested, but that commissioner has also been to a previous conference. So if there are any other individuals that are interested that have not been, we would typically give priority to that commissioner. However, if there's only that one commissioner interested, we would like to move forward with getting that registration set up and those accommodations made as soon as possible. So if you're interested, please see me by the end of the night to let me know that you might be interested, and we can try and work out
If it's
those
okay
arrangements.
with you, I was going to ask you if you didn't bring it up. If it's okay with you, I'd kind of like to work that out during commission member comment when we're all here.
Sure.
Just so the commission knows what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Works for me.
so,
Moving on to the engineering updates, the project that I'm sure you all are well aware of at this point. After a short closure, 155th Street is back open to traffic. Moving into the spring, they'll add some more striping and finish up some driveway work with some of the property owners that have joined that. But it is back open, thankfully, and I know the snowplow crews were able to get that cleared pretty quickly over this last weekend, so we're excited about that. With regards to Hawk Ridge Park, that project is moving along very nicely. The north shelter has both chimneys constructed, and they're working on the walls for the bathrooms that go around those two chimneys, so they're chipping away at that. The south building was installed previously that has the two separate bathroom facilities in it, another very nice looking building on the property. They're now looking to start the construction of 2 buildings close to the shelter, and that will hopefully wrap up in the spring. Mr. Rokos did share another exciting picture with me with regards to the amphitheater. I believe they've started putting up the actual vertical columns that will support the roof of that, so that building is starting to take shape up there as well. So that project overall is moving along pretty quickly and pretty smoothly, so we're excited to see that continue into the spring. That would conclude both community development and engineering updates. I'd be happy to answer any questions if
Thank
you
you,
had any.
Mr. Grass. Does Commission have any questions for Mr. Grass? Okay, well, you must have answered all our questions. At this time, we'll move on. I'll open the floor for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak is welcome to come forward to the podium. Please give us your name and address for the record. And normally we'd ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes or so, but I'm not too worried this evening. So the floor is open for public comment.
Just pertaining to that or any comments
Oh, public comment.
for anything? Okay.
Well, hopefully it concerns Raymore and Planning and Zoning Commission.
It does. A long report back to my part.
My hearing's terrible, so Jonathan, will you make sure the light's on? And thank you.
Okay, hi,
Good.
hello. My name is Sarah Gaston, 530 North Fox Ridge. I've had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with some of you individually ahead of time, so you probably know why I'm here. I'm here to ask for reconsideration of our current city ordinance pertaining to urban chickens. As you probably know, our current city code allows chickens in areas that are zoned A and RE and are greater than 3 acres in size. Myself and a group that I've been working with, some of which does include city council, have been working together to kind of raise awareness in housing family flocks. If you would allow me, I'd like to explain a few myths that commonly surround urban chickens and reason why we're asking for a new review of the code. Don't see anybody objecting. The main concerns that routinely surface when the topic of city chickens is discussed are noise, waste management, predators, rodents, appearance, property value, and what will my neighbors think. So to start off with, let's start with noise. Laying hens at their loudest have about the same decibel level as human conversation. Hens are so quiet that there have been cases of family flocks being kept for years without their next door neighbors actually knowing it. For most, the confusion comes in with roosters. A lot of people don't realize that hens do not need their noisy male counterpart to actually lay eggs. They can do this without a man, just saying. Chickens can do it. We'll leave it there. So we would also be requesting no roosters in the ordinance as well. Secondly would be waste management. A 40-pound dog generates more solid waste than 10 chickens per day. We would be proposing about 3 hens per household. The advantages of chicken manure is that it's used as valuable high nitrogen fertilizer. Unlike dog or cat waste, chicken manure can be combined with yard waste to create compost. Just as valuable, about 40% of chicken manure is actually organic matter, which is necessary to build fertile topsoil, fertile and healthy topsoil. Third on the list is predators, pests, and rodents. Predators and rodents are already living here in urban areas. As we know, we see coyotes and foxes and all the little critters everywhere. Wild bird feeders, pet foods, gardens, fish ponds, bird baths, trash waiting to be collected, all these things that we already have here in Raymore are already here. And these also attract the raccoons and foxes and coyotes and everything else. Chickens are voracious carnivores. They'll seek and eat just about anything that moves. So flies, mosquitoes, ticks, grasshoppers, stink bugs, fleas, blah, 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 blah. All of those go along are things that chickens would snack on. Homeowners would still have the responsibility to ensure that their coops are secured from larger predators, just as residents already have to do with their dogs to protect them from, the foxes and whatnot. Fourth on the list is appearances. Residents are worried that coops are ugly. Microflock coops are designed to be charming and upscale and whimsical. Common design features include blending in with local architectural style. For example, part of the code would be that the coop would have to have a matching paint or shingle color of the household that it resides with. Next, we have property value. There's not one single documented case of urban chickens lowering property value. On the contrary, local foods and Living Green is so fashionable that some realtors and home sellers are even offering free coops with every home sale. There's an article at greenways.com about this. It was very well written. And then lastly, we have what our neighbors would think. We can't control what anybody thinks, much less our neighbors. We also usually don't get to pick our neighbors. My family did have a flock here in Raymore. We had 3 hens, and I can tell you we were the neighborhood favorites. We met many of our neighbors by them finding out that we had chickens. They would save their food scraps. Their kids would come over and hang out, and of course they wanted eggs. It went along with it. But the main I feel like thing that's overlooked, or advantage that's overlooked with chickens, is the waste management. Their role in solid waste management. Chickens are biomass recyclers, and they can divert tons of organic matter from trash collections and landfills, which we kind of did with our neighborhood. Everybody brought us scraps, and we gave them eggs, and it was great. In closing, I hope that some of this information will help you as we review the current city ordinance. We live and love Raymore just the same as everybody else. I do believe that we would be remiss if we do not give the ordinance the diligence of scrutiny. I'm not a self-proclaimed chicken expert. I'd be happy to research any specific questions that anybody may have. Many cities surrounding us allow urban chickens or family flocks. Our city slogan here in Raymore is Raymore, come home to more. But sometimes I can't feel like we're coming home to less if we don't at least take a look at this. That's all I've got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Mr. Gress, if you or Mr. Zer would remind me, I'm not quite remembering real accurately. I believe we might have had an intern one summer, that wasn't you, who did a presentation to commission on urban chickens. Commissioner Armstrong, it seems like you were on the commission when we had that discussion, so it can't be too long ago. Have we discussed urban chickens since you've been on the commission?
Yes, we had the discussion, but there wasn't an intern presentation at that time.
Okay. Was it just a annual review of Unified Development Code?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
We had it 3 or 4 years ago, Jerry.
3 or 4,
when the person
yeah.
came
So it's been a while. We have discussed it. I don't remember. Actually, I kind of forget timelines. Were you here then?
I believe the last time that the commission saw this, or at least an iteration of this ordinance, was the exact same time that we discussed the accessory dwelling units.
Right.
The first round of the sidewalk discussion.
Right.
I believe that was the
Which we
26th
stalled
or
off.
26th or 27th amendment to the UDC.
Yeah, okay.
Back in the early 2018 or late 2017. So it's been a little bit of time in between. And I know that staff, Mr. Cataract, has worked on some research for a couple of our council members in cooperation with Ms. Gaston and the group that she's organized. So we've been talking about this topic for some time. It tends to resurface just as soon as we think that it's kind of disappeared for a little while. So we've been working to research the topic here, and we're just moving along with that.
Well, I think I'm probably not going to be exhaustive here, but sometimes we get a case at the suggestion of City Council. It starts here, we do the review before it goes back to them. Sometimes we get a case as a result of our annual review of Unified Development Code, and that can come either from commissioner initiative or staff initiative. Otherwise, we certainly have some opportunities to look at this again, right?
Absolutely. There are a couple different ways that staff could proceed in reviewing this. Either it could be parlayed into part of our annual review into the growth management plan, or the Unified Development Code, similar to the way it came forward to the commission previously. At that point, the commission would direct staff to research some sort of ordinance or revision to the existing code, present that to the commission for a public hearing and public comment, at which point it would either receive a recommendation of approval or denial to the City Council,
Right.
who would have the
Right.
final say in the matter.
And if I remember correctly, because that was I think my very first
okay.
commission meeting was being welcomed by the chickens. If I remember correctly, we did approve the new level that she mentioned that allowed chickens to actually be a part of the code, because if I remember correctly, prior to that meeting, chickens weren't allowed at all. And then if I'm also recollecting that meeting, that the idea was to kind of introduce chickens in general,
Yeah.
allowing then some time for, call it, city the community, whoever, to kind of adjust to the fact that chickens are now at least an option at some level, to then revisit and with the hopes of increasing the ability for folks to have chickens as time went on. So my assumption was that we would be reviewing it, to your point, you know, as we review the annual
Right.
code and then resuggesting, you know, more info on
Yeah.
chickens.
And Commissioner Kia, that jives with my memory, because what I remembered was we took a cautious step forward and wanted to test the water, get some experience.
Correct. We didn't want to.
Yeah.
We didn't want to attempt to dive in and get it completely rejected. We wanted to.
Right, or create
Right.
a huge mess. Commissioner Crane?
I've dealt with chickens in my neighborhood long before they ever became
Legal or illegal?
popular. I mean, they've always been out in my neighborhood. And I think that we took that one initial step and allowed them on such. But I mean, and I think we probably ought to revisit it again. You know, and I've lived out there for 30-some-odd years, and they've never been a problem to me, except for the one rooster down the street. And I point him out to the coyote that comes across my pasture every time.
Yeah.
But
Well-
other than that, I think, you know, it'd be fine to revisit it.
And as I remember from some of the discussion, and again, I'm sure I don't remember all the details, but my personal memory is that people were kind of polarized. There were some people that had lived next to chickens with roosters and everything else, and sounded like they could be obnoxious under those circumstances, and other folks with particularly just hens in a reasonable number. So it was,
It wasn't just the roosters and the noise that you're right. It was very polarized, but I think part of the negative side too wasn't just the roosters. It was also the call it the maintenance of the coops. You know, and to the point, what impact do folks who don't follow the code of making their coops match their home and things? What kind of impact does that have as you go through the neighborhood?
Right.
On the negative side? But again, my perspective and my understanding was we were taking as you put it, a cautious step forward, in the hopes of revisiting it later to then be able to continue down the path of allowing chickens.
And we can always take steps to put restrictions on it to where if they do become a nuisance, it can be dealt with.
what I remember also, and I don't want to try to recall all of this discussion this evening, but I think, Mr. Gress, hopefully your memory is better than mine. Didn't we do some benchmarking, look at ordinances of adjacent suburbs, KC Metro?
We did.
Yeah, so we had that, and now, on top of that prior work, we would obviously ask staff, have you had complaints about chickens where we did allow them? Yeah. Commissioner Armstrong?
I think one of the other concerns that was raised was the increased predator
Presence.
numbers
Yeah.
in communities that had them. I think Sarah spoke to the fact that really she hadn't seen that, and I did look into it. I can't find anything that actually documents that that's a true concern. And I guess, to your point, one of the positives of raising the issue again would allow continued discussion and further information about those issues, so that when it would become a true motion to amend, we would have further information available.
Right.
The other point would be that the fact that this has come up again quickly indicates to me that there's a community interest that is significant. And when you look at the communities around that have already approved this issue, we are kind of on the slow end of that adoption process. And I think for a community that's growing, that can be seen as a negative.
Right.
Yeah, and I do believe it was maybe mentioned by a commissioner that part of the reason we didn't want to move completely forward was because we were a unique community and we wanted to maintain our identity and not just follow. I mean, it's not my opinion. I think I remember someone mentioning that. And again, so kind of I think the idea was to move forward in a way that the commission would be agreeable with, test the waters to your point of,
Right.
you know, now it's actually in the code at some level. What were the results of that? You know, how many chickens are now running around on 3-acre plus lots in Raymore, and how many complaints do we have, and how many foxes and those things have moved into the area to feast on these chickens that we've allowed, and yeah. So to the point, I think any time is fine with me as far as revisiting the topic and any new information the city may have with the implementation of what we did do.
Mr. Zur?
Thank you, Chairman. Without trying to dissuade the commission from any of the proposed actions, I did want to address something with Commissioner Armstrong's comments, and that is that the most recent study session from the City Council did have the council reviewing the upcoming ETC survey, citizen survey that will be going out. Council members did request, and there will be a question on it that will attempt to or help to gauge the temperature of chickens, the addition of chickens to the code within the citizens and community as a large. So within a couple of, I want to say within the month or two, we should be receiving a good information back, or at least a good touchstone for what the actual interest is.
Right, that's
There's a
very good to know.
Facebook page also that has a lively discussion.
Well, I think
You
I'll,
can look
I
at.
think I'll count on the ETC survey to be a little more unbiased, but that's another data point. That's a good thing. Thank you, Mr. Zur. So, Mr. Grass, I'm just kind of thinking ahead. The two reviews that commission normally conducts during a year, we do a review of the growth management plan, and then seems like about half a year later, we do a review of the Unified Development Code. And one of the things with growth management plan, which is a document that Planning and Zoning Commission owns, but one of the major things that comes up usually in that discussion is that we're trying to preserve the character of Raymore, what attracted us, what brought us here. We're trying to protect that. At the same time, we know Raymore is growing, typically doubles every 10 years in population, and so we're trying to manage that process, but we can't stop growth. So that's one opportunity, and the other, to me, probably the better opportunity for a commission initiative would be annual review of the Unified Development Code, but that's going to be a while, isn't it?
It'll be a little bit. Usually in April is when we try and revisit the growth management plan. And then a few months after that is when we start looking closely at the Unified Development Code. One thing I'll mention, just for clarification, is that you wouldn't necessarily have to wait until that review to request. The commission can request any sort of code change or code research and direct staff to look further into that at any time. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that.
And on that note, did we request more information on chickens at that time?
I don't believe so. The last code
'Cause-
change, I don't believe staff was directed to look any further into it at that point.
So could I request then that you guys look into how many chickens now exist on the new plot sizes that we approved at our last meeting?
The tricky part with that is that the city doesn't have any way to necessarily track that. The only ones that we know of have really come up because of either complaints or cases where our animal control have been involved and come across chickens. We don't have any sort of registry or anything like that we would be able to go out and track and take any polls.
So not like dog or cat licenses?
Correct. So that's the issue with that approach. I
Maybe
would say.
that's
So
a
when
new
we get-
revenue source.
We get to that point,
Yeah.
when we get to that point, is it possible that, when I say that point, I mean the point where we're actually gonna review this at some point, either at the growth management plan or the city code. Can you include some of the complaints and problems as well, instead of, give us the whole picture, when that happens, so we can kind of make some informed decisions from there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Commissioner Armstrong.
Yeah, kind of in follow-up to that, is there a way to assess if there have been issues with predators or calls regarding that? Or would that need to be highlighted to city organizations in order for them to track it?
I think it would have to be something that those cities are actively tracking. I don't work all that closely with our animal control folks, or certainly animal control for other cities, so I don't know what the process is for reporting those complaints from neighbors or what that looks like. But if the commission is interested in that information, we can certainly dig a little bit deeper and work with our animal control folks to figure out where those complaints are coming from and what those complaints specifically are.
So do we need a motion for you to look into that, or just a request?
I think a request.
So requested.
Well, right, and I was going to ask, so are you agreeable if we request staff to look into urban chickens? But my opinion would be that I really don't want staff to come back to us until after we get the ETC survey results.
Oh, and I would be
Is that
agreeable to
quick
that.
enough?
Yeah, I would say if you could look into any negatives or even positives on that have been mentioned in regards to urban chickens we know that we're the only city, because everyone tells us Peculiar does it, Belton, Lee Summit. So we know all of the cities around us, so the same area that we're in, allow chickens. And if you could just
I didn't know that.
yeah, that was one of the points that was brought up at the meeting.
I don't read
is-
Facebook, sorry.
No, this wasn't on Facebook. This was in our meeting, that we were the only city that didn't
Oh,
allow chickens
okay.
at that
Your
time.
memory's
And that was
better
one of
than
the
mine.
arguments to why we should. And that's why I mentioned that there was someone who mentioned that we are, we're Raymore, we're unique. We don't want to just follow the whatever. But if you could, yeah, and to your point, I'm fine with it being in tandem with the survey, because I do want to know what that, as I'm sure most of us do, what that says the community's true pulse is on chickens, and then, yeah, anything we can
Yeah. What I've,
have go along with that as far as issues that other cities have encountered, if any.
what I've seen of the survey in past years, city council seems to put a lot of weight on that survey. That seems to be what sets a lot of their direction.
Rightly so. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's the community's chance to express what they want to see in Raymore, I would hope that directs our city council's direction in which way they
Yeah,
go.
but also I feel more comfortable from a planning and zoning commission standpoint, knowing which way the wind is blowing before we take off.
Yeah, and for that reason, I'm in complete agreement that I would still like the information, even if the ETC came back and the city's completely against chickens.
yeah.
I think it
No,
would still
we wanna
be
hear-
good to know.
We want to hear a report regardless of which way the survey goes. I just wanted to make sure that we waited until the survey was in. Mr. Gress, that good? Commissioner Armstrong?
Sorry for my lack of information, but the survey goes out to all community members, and is there?
Not necessarily.
Okay, can
Yeah.
somebody enlighten me on what that process is?
It's not a selected, it's a random group of individual members of the community from dispersed amongst each one of the 4 wards. I believe that's last number I heard was somewhere in the range of 2,500 to 2,700. I could be wrong on that number, but I think it was the 2,500
Yeah,
individuals.
statistically significant and statistically random. Yes, go ahead.
Could I ask the community member? It looks like there may be additional information to that, or?
Okay, please, come forward, but we can't hear you unless you're at the podium. Sure, I think so.
It was brought up at the city meeting. There's 2,000 that go out, and roughly they get about 600 back. So I wouldn't put a lot of weight into what information we're gonna receive back. And also the question that is on there, it's not like a yes/no phrase question, do you want chickens? There's actually 5 line items that will be on the question, and you have to rank them of order of importance. So I wouldn't.
You didn't write the survey, did you?
I could have, if they would have let me.
Okay.
But so I just wanted to let you guys know how that fell out. It wasn't we
Thank
weren't
you.
allowed to have our own question. We had to filter in with somebody else's. So.
Well, I'm still interested in the survey. It's perhaps one of the better data points that we have.
It's something.
Thank you.
And if I could add, just so you all know what to expect when that question comes around, I'm not sure what the specific wording was that the council eventually chose, but it was something along the lines of the city of Raymore currently allows chickens on lots that are zoned X, Y, and Z, or properties that are 3 acres in size. Would you be in support of allowing urban chickens on lots smaller than that? So like Ms. Gasson said, it's not necessarily a yes or no question. It's would you be okay with this size or this size or this size? So it'll hopefully paint a good picture of the exact lot size that our community would be comfortable having chickens on. So I agree with the commission that would paint a good picture and give staff and the council and commission good direction to move forward with looking into the issue.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Apologies. My recall from our discussion was one of the main concerns was the predator issue. Are we aware of any other prime concerns from city about this? The coop?
If we could, I don't want to shut you down, but I feel like, let's not dig the hole too deep tonight. Can we leave the details for a later discussion?
My only request was that if there were other concerns, if that could be researched in the interim
Oh, sure. I
to
see
present
your
then
point.
at the follow-up meeting.
So, Ms. Gaston, are there other things that staff should look into, in your opinion? And again, sorry, we'll run you back and forth, but
No, I think,
you covered it pretty thoroughly,
even
I
just
thought.
Googling urban chickens brings up a whole lot. There's lots of lists of pros and cons that everybody can check into. As with anything, there's going to be cons, and we understand that, but I believe that the pros outweigh them, and there's ways of managing the cons with this.
Well, we'll see what commission thinks, and
Well, and not,
eventually we'll see what council thinks.
say not just commissioner council, I would like to know what has been going on. Again, the nice thing is, aside from Google, we have every city around us that allows urban chickens. And I know you guys have relationships with those, with our surrounding cities.
And
So
so
I
you're,
would-
you're suggesting not just see what the adjacent cities have for ordinances, but actually talk to them, see what they have for experience?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and we've spoke at the group that we work with, we've spoke with Belton and Lee Summit, both of their animal patrol offices, and they said we never have complaints. They couldn't actually find something in writing of a complaint to provide us with. There have been calls that they've went out and investigated, but it was nothing worthwhile even documenting.
good to know. Thank you. Commissioner Armstrong, I was kind of trying to stop digging the hole until another discussion, but is that okay with you? Did you get?
Yeah, that was my intent too. So,
Okay,
thank you.
We're good for this evening. All right. Unless there's anyone else from the public that wants to talk to us this evening, let's move on to commission member comment. And, oh, gosh. I can't pick on Mayor Turnbow this evening, so Commissioner Urquia, let me start with you.
All right, well, I guess, according to your request, Chairperson, throw my name in the hat for the,
APA annual
Trip to San
conference.
Francisco.
that thing.
There you go.
And
And you've not been before?
I have not.
Okay, so you're one.
But, and then along with that, you know, as always, grateful for the city and the staff and everything you guys do, and look forward to an exciting 2019.
Yep, it's off to a wild start.
Gotta love those chickens.
Well, I'm thinking of the weather, and no, I don't gotta love it. Commissioner Crane,
No comment.
Commissioner Pfizer, Vice Chair Pfizer, Secretary Crane.
Well, I'm the person who put my name in that has been to a convention before, so I understand if like someone who hasn't been can go, because
Right.
it really is a great opportunity. And I did notice in their schedule of different things to do, there was a tour of accessory dwellings, so whoever goes, I'm going to strongly suggest that
Research
you
it and bring us
go
back.
visit that tour. Also, I wanted to mention that I visited the Freezing Moo that has opened recently. I like to throw out a shout out to the new businesses. And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they opened now.
Right in the middle of the cold weather.
But it's still very good, and
Yep.
you can go inside and it's warm. There's lots of seating. So that's my plug. Everyone should go there and have some ice cream.
Thank you. And by the way, you know, for the moment, I'm much happier to have more than one commissioner who would like to go, because hopefully you're good for the trip. We'll see who else, but, you know, plans change, things come up. It's always good to have a backup. So
Okay.
thank you for being willing to go as well. Commissioner Armstrong.
Well, I will probably plan to go, but we'll do it on my own. So if you need a backup, I'll put my hat into the ring for that as well. And just thank you to everybody that worked to get the electricity back on. I know that's not strictly us, but I saw a lot of good community support in that process in Raymore, and it just made me glad to be here.
Good. Thank you. Commissioner Peterman.
I don't have much. Thank you, Sarah, for coming, and this will be an interesting topic, I'm sure, so we'll spend some time on that. But city staff is busy as normal. Had a big snowstorm, and that was successful on getting all the streets plowed and everything, so prepare for this one, I guess. Go Chiefs.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterman. Commissioner Bowie, it's good to see you.
No comment, well, other than thank you all. That's it.
Okay, so just to summarize, I would say, unless commission has other thoughts, Mr. Grass, I'd say that Commissioner Urquia, first timer to APA, he's your man. If something comes up last minute, Commissioner Pfizer, you might, well, not, I know, within reason. And
I only
Commissioner-
have 6 kids, so I don't know that anything's going to pop up, but we'll
Well,
see.
Commissioner Armstrong, sounds like you're planning to go on your own nickel, so I'm certainly fine with that, but we'd love to hear your experience and what you can bring back as well. Thank you. And we should be able to recognize Commissioner Armstrong as representing City of Raymore as well. That might be a record turnout for City of Raymore. Hey, yeah, and I trust you and Mr. Carteret. Okay. I will add, you're small but mighty. Thank you to city staff. As always, we couldn't do this job without you. Thank you to the public. We appreciate hearing from you. We can guess, but that's a dangerous proposition. And I think we thoroughly jinxed our short meeting agenda for this evening, so all is well. I'm glad we don't bet money on it. Unless there's anything else from the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
So, motion by Commissioner Bowie, second by Commissioner Urquia. All those in favor of adjournment, raise a hand, please. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see your hand. So we got 7 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. And a crash.